from the Charter Board. And I see we have members of the Charter Board present. Mrs. Holtz, I expect that Mr. Leonard Collins will take the lead?
Yes, Mr. Collins will.
All righty.
As chairman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Collins and Ms. Way. Good to see you again. Good. The other Mr. Collins, your brother. And I see we have quite a few folks here, so wonderful. Thank you. I got short arms, Leonard. Can you help me out here?
That's the official one that you just got handed.
Thank you. I'm going to write that on the front of it. Okay, so we'll have it for the record.
We thought there were too many pages on Word docs for you to read.
So this is an important step in the process, and Mr. Collins, Leonard Collins, who is the chair of the Charter Board Committee, will explain, I would expect, a little bit about why we're here today and how this process works. But before you do that, Mr. Collins, would you kindly introduce the members of the Charter Board who are attending with you?
Yeah. My name is Leonard Collins. To my right is Camilla Way. Also present today are Paula Davis, Craig Renner, Ernest Wallace, Matthew Wills, and our alternate, James DeAtley.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
There are several members of the board who couldn't be here today, but we were unanimous in voting in favor of this board. First, I'd like to say that all of us appreciated the opportunity to have served on the Charles County Charter Board. This group of volunteers seriously and thoughtfully deliberated the nature of county government over the last 18 months. We thought about what powers that government should have and how county citizens should be able to direct the actions of their government. We wish to thank the staff who supported our deliberations, and additional thanks to those citizens who took the time to read the proposed charter and to speak to us, as well as all the witnesses who came and talked with us. All their comments were helpful and led to changes and clarifications. We applaud all the county commissioners who recognized the need for the county to move forward and voted unanimously to designate this board to create a charter. Every past and current public official who spoke to our board favored a charter form of government. As we progressed through this process, we became more convinced that Charles County could benefit from a charter form of government. We agree that the government we have does not exemplify the effective, responsive, and efficient functioning government our county deserves. We believe there are several reasons to support this charter form of county government for Charles County. One, this charter creates a separation and distribution of powers, legislative and executive powers. The government of Charles County is complex enough that executive and legislation powers should be separate. Currently, it is not. Charles County employees need one boss, not 5, as with the current form of government. This charter will establish a county executive and a county council. Checks and balances. By creating an executive and legislative branch, this charter mandates checks and balances between the two branches. Today, all the power rests with the county commissioners. With the charter government, the power is balanced between the executive and the council. It is not concentrated in one entity. Moreover, citizens retain more power by being able to amend the charter and to take most legislation passed by council to referendum. This gives county residents a greater role in managing and directing their government. With regard to representation, currently all our county commissioners are elected at large, including the president of the county commission. This charter, for the first time, provides district representation as well as at-large representation for those who are elected to the council, allowing for a balance of district and county-wide interest. The county executive will also run for election, obviously at large. Citizens, With an eye towards the budget, we decided not to create more council members, beyond the 5 that we currently have as commissioners. Citizens can do that at a later date if they choose to expand the number as the county grows in population. With regard to cost, the Charles County budget is approaching $350 million annually. The increased costs associated with adopting a charter form of government are negligible, amounting to about 0.02%. We drafted the charter with an eye towards cost containment to the degree possible. We were conscious of cost and reduced the salaries of and eliminated the fringe benefits for the council, since they will serve part-time and their functions will be reduced to legislative functions. We established the salary of the county executive to be in line with many other executive-level salaries in the county, including the Sheriff's Office, the Board of Education, and the leadership of the individual Charles County schools. We wanted the county to be competitive and be able to attract a capable executive. Debt. Again, with an eye towards fiscal responsibility and solvency, we have in this charter restricted the county debt to lower than allowed by state law and lower than any other county in Maryland. Moreover, we have taken steps to require the county executive and council fund the pension and post-employment benefits they promise to teachers, police, and other public employees. With regard to the budget process, one problem cited by several past and present commissioners was the county's current budget process. Under this charter, the county executive will be required to submit an annual budget to the council and meet mandated deadlines to do so. The council, in considering that budget, may not raise the levels of spending proposed by the county executive. It can lower amounts spent on specific programs proposed by the county executive. As a result, voters will know who to assign credit or blame for overall levels of spending and how that spending is prioritized. Term limits. For the first time, elected officials in Charles County will be subject to term limits. Charles County is a growing and modern county. It is ready for a more modern and more functional form of government than we have today. We can start to prepare now for the future, and Charles County citizens can have the opportunity to do that with the vote for the charter government. A charter government is called the people's government because it gives the people a constitution, and only the voters or the people can change the charter, not the council, not the executive. Today, we get the government that we vote on, and the government the commissioners decide to give us. As we have observed our county government over the past few years, we have become convinced that the system must be changed to prevent the problems that have occurred over the last few years. We're convinced that the charter government has the capacity to be more effective, responsive, and efficient. And as members of the Charter Board, we unanimously voted to send this county charter to the commissioners to place on the November 2014 ballot. It is our collective belief that the charter we have proposed for the county government includes a number of measures that will make the government more responsive to and more easily directed by the citizens it serves. We believe it will make it easier for citizens to identify which elected officials are responsible for policies that the citizens either support or oppose, and for the citizens to be able to assign responsibility to those officials as appropriate at the ballot box. Presenting to the Board of Commissioners this charter is our final act. However, we will make ourselves available to our fellow citizens and our fellow voters for any questions or concerns they might have. We take pride not only in the charter we have written, but also in our willingness as charter members to listen not only to witnesses, friends, neighbors, and the public, but also to each other. Unanimously, we encourage Charles County voters to adopt this charter in the November election. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Commissioners, any questions?
Lots.
Okay. Now remember, okay. Commissioner Robinson.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for the amazing amount of time and energy that you put into this. I spent a lot of time watching some of the videos of your meetings, and all of you brought something very specific to the table and worked very hard. I am still a little confused, however, about the charge that you were given. It was my understanding when this was initially brought up that when we were establishing a charter board, that their charge was initially to be, do we want to move forward? And somehow that morphed into writing a charter. So I'm going to look towards Ms. Holtz to sort of clarify that for me. But before you answer, my other question is as it relates to this resolution that's before us. Do we, as commissioners, still have the authority at this point in time, if we do not pass this resolution, to keep charter off the ballot, or is it a done deal?
The Constitution requires that it go on the ballot after this process.
So even if we do not adopt the resolution, it will still be on the ballot?
Right, the resolution I did to kind of just lay out the process. The charter also mandates that the county attorney draft an appropriate question to go on the ballot, and at this point everything is moving
in that direction.
According to the Constitution.
Okay, so can you answer the first question that I posed, and then I will have a question for the members of the Charter Board about the charge.
The charge was to evaluate, and then you all determined that you wanted a charter. I don't remember the exact date. A resolution came before you to establish a charter board.
Correct, but I also remember two resolutions. One that was to establish the charter board, in which I was, like I mentioned a moment ago, whether that board's charge would be, do we want to move forward with a charter? And then somehow it morphed into a second resolution.
The first one was not consistent in all its parts with the Constitution, so the second one was written to be consistent.
So then the charge was write a charter?
Yes.
Okay. Now that you've written the charter, I have one question about the representative government. There would be 3 districts which would vote exclusively for their council member. I'm just curious why you reduced the number of districts from 4 to 3. And I realize that the 4 current districts are just resident districts and that every commissioner runs at large. But I would have thought, based on the work done by the committee in following the 2010 census to determine the 4 districts, that you would have stuck with that.
Okay. We had much debate about how many, well, first, about how many members the council should have. And we decided to go with 5. Then with regard to the issue of should they be elected all at large, should they be elected all by district, or should we have a compromise? And there were discussions both ways. We decided that there was some value, and ultimately, I think as a group, we moved to a split of 2 at large and 3 by district. And I'll try to summarize what I think were the reasons that we found value in that compromise. First, by having district representation, it allows more people easier access to run for office. They don't have to run countywide, they can run in a district. Less expense presumably is involved, and it opens up the process a little bit more. It also allows that person who is elected by district to focus on a smaller group of citizens to serve. On the other hand, we listen to people who, with regard to should we have all the council be by district. We listened to a number of people who pointed out to us that if everyone is by district, then when there is something that has to be done that is not necessarily desirable,
Popular.
I'll pick a landfill as an example, that there can be a level of parochialism where someone who's representing his or her district takes the position that we'll put the landfill anywhere but in my district, and that it's useful to have people who are elected at large who will take a look at the overall welfare of the entire county in deciding where to put that less desirable site, whether it's a landfill or a new detention center or whatever. The flip side of that is if there's something that's a positive, a new magnet school, and it's something desirable that someone might want to have in their district. Well, the first inclination is I want that positive project in my district. So, we other issues that were pointed out to us were that with the balance that we have, the people who set our taxes, we will, some citizens would like to vote for everybody who has a say in how much we spend and how much we tax. And we have, in this setup, an individual will get to vote for their district representative and the two at large. So they'll get to vote for 3 people on the council, as well as the county executive who is at large. One of the, and I can't speak for all the members of the charter board, but certainly some of us were struck by the testimony from Doug Duncan, who was the county executive in Montgomery County a few years back. And he explained to us that as county executive, Montgomery County has 5 districts and 4 at large. At large seats were added in Montgomery County, and he said that he was grateful as the county executive. There were times when he was grateful that he had at-large council people who looked at the whole county and not just a district. Those were some of the reasons we heard, and that's the compromise that we struck. There's certainly there, as far as, although all the members of the board voted unanimously that this charter is good and support it, if you talk to individual members of the board, some of them will say that was an item that they compromised on, that they would have preferred going with more than 3 by district. Others will tell you that they wanted 5 at large. One of the this charter board was the 9 of us went in with different opinions about, just as Americans have different opinions about everything, and we learned from each other, not just from the witnesses that were called, but also from acquaintances, friends, neighbors, the citizens, and we learned as we went along, and we compromised when we thought that although the group view was not necessarily our view, it was a reasonable view and one that we were able to accept. So that's the process, and I think those are most of the reasons why we went with the split of 3 and 2. Wasn't what I'm not sure it was exactly what anybody envisioned when we started, but in the end, I think we were all very satisfied, or a substantial majority of us were satisfied with it for the reasons I've given.
Will you be giving, and maybe it's in here, guidance on the redistricting? For example, do you see those 3 districts, straight down so that you have a little bit of all types of population? Do you see one being rural? How did you envision that?
It's in the charter.
And I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to read it all.
The charter is just a blueprint, and in terms of in terms of all sorts of, how the districts get drawn, there'll be a commission that does that. The election, if the charter passes if the citizens vote in favor of the charter in November, then there'll be an election in 2016. We decided that apparently the expense, since there's already going to be an election, the expense will be negligible. Those who get elected in 2014 as commissioners, admittedly, they might have started this process, and they may still think that it's going to be a 4-year term, but if the citizens decide it's 2 years, then they just have to be mindful of the fact that serving any public office is a privilege, not a right, and the citizens have just cut the privilege back to 2 years. So in 2 years, we would anticipate that there would be a redistricting, and how it is done
It's up to the commission.
It's going to be up to that
see it now.
commission.
Okay, all right.
It's a blueprint.
Thank you. Any Commissioner Collins?
Mr. Collins and members of the committee, I personally would like to commend the time and effort that you put into this very historical exercise. And I think in a lot of ways, and perhaps it was not necessarily something that was done intentionally, but I think that the breadth of the exercise of establishing an actual charter or a constitution for a community is something that should be viewed as a major accomplishment. And so I wanted to make that point certainly public. And I every now and then I would get an opportunity to kind of look at the deliberations that you went through during the course of this. And again, I think our citizens, whether they vote for it or not, the fact that we've gone through this process is something that I think is extremely important, and I think it's part of the overall progression of our community. I can recall very vividly the period between 2001 2002 when the county was looking at the idea of moving towards code home rule. And the process then certainly was not on any level one that included an actual charter committee. So I just wanted to make that point, and I certainly want and hope that our citizens appreciate, how important this work is. I mean, literally articulating and establishing what is essentially a charter, a constitution for our community.
Yes. And if I could, just with to Commissioner Robinson's point about whether or not our charge was to decide whether or not to write our charter or not, the Maryland Constitution says that a charter board shall write a charter. So that was our charge.
I think Ms. Halls clarified that for me.
Okay, and so that's what we did, and then it's just up to the citizens to decide whether they think what we wrote is better than what we have.
Well, and I think, for you all, it's important to understand that what this board did in, December of 2011 was one thing, and then I don't think that the board entirely understood the change. What we recommend, or what we had asked to happen, clearly was not permitted by the Constitution, but at that point in time we thought we were right on, and we wanted to see it happen a little differently, but certainly we're here, and we followed the Constitution. So thank you for everyone for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Commissioner Davis, did you want to add anything? Commissioner Rucci?
I would like to chime in and say thank you. Thank you for accepting this awesome task and this awesome responsibility of drafting the charter, and for your part in making history in our county. Thank you so much. And for setting a great example on consensus building. You guys did a great job of hearing from so many different people and coming to a unanimous document is unheard of. So thank you so much for each of you for bringing your expertise, your own personal expertise to the table and sharing it on behalf of our citizens. That is a great thing, and we don't take it lightly. You really dedicated a lot of time to this. And as has been stated, the rules state that this goes forward We have little, if no, say on this, and I like it that way. I mean, it's a great example of you doing your part. I'm glad the state law mandates it, because you do your part. It goes through us, past us, by us, and on the ballot for the citizens to decide. And that's an awesome responsibility. And I'm glad not to have to weigh in one way or the other. You mentioned that you would be available in the future. And so I, for one, would like you to be available to answer questions like Commissioner, that guy. Commissioner Robinson, I cannot remember his name for nothing in the world. Commissioner Robinson
How quickly they forget.
I know. Commissioner Robinson mentioned, I mean, there are questions, and as far as how you came to your conclusion, it would be great to have you available for that. Again, thank you so much. I know I've watched the tapes also, and I appreciate the civility and the reasonableness in your debate. I'm amazed by it, and I'm reassured by it. I think it was an awesome job.
Thank you. Commissioner Rucci?
Real quick.
Commissioner Collins?
Just one quick question. So are you guys considered framers now?
The framers?
Right, framers of the Constitution.
That's funny.
Founding fathers and mothers.
Okay.
I had a couple questions, and when you were dealing with the capital piece in terms of appropriations and how they're made, the debt limit. Could you tell me under 508 borrowing limitations? So you're saying the county may not exceed a total of 3% of assessable basis for real estate property, and then later, I believe. You do mention 15% of the county's assessable basis of personal property and operating real property. How does that tie into our current method of doing things, where we keep it? We have a ceiling for flexibility between 8 and 15%.
Okay. Currently, let's go with the every charter has, by Maryland law, a cap of 6%. Mm-hmm. Okay. Charles County is currently operating, I believe, around 1.6. I see Mr. Belton is nodding his head, so I must be close.
Okay.
And over the next 5 years, it fluctuates up and down a little bit, and ends around 1.4. Am I correct? 1.4 then. So this would. There was some talk about saying we could hold it at the 1.6 or whatever, and we discussed it, and we had a recommendation from Dave Eicholtz, who said that he would like to have flexibility, mm-hmm. and that 5%. He could live with 5%, but he'd prefer that we not go lower than that. Mm-hmm. And we discussed it. We also listened to evidence about whether or not it would impact the county's bond rating, mm-hmm. and a majority of us concluded that it would not. Although we were split on that,
has that been reviewed by our bond counsel? Do we know?
They participated in one of our meetings.
We had an opinion from bond counsel, and we also had Richard Winkler come and talk to us, and he said that while he certainly thought that Mr. Eicholtz was doing an excellent job, and that
well, that's good to hear,
and that he knew that and he was familiar with bond counsel as well, he thought that the 3% was more than reasonable and basically gives the county that leeway from 1.5% where we are now to double it. And of course that would mean our debt
and I don't
would go up, our debt maintenance would go up as well. And one of the things that earlier in the discussions, we had talked about the unfunded pensions that many jurisdictions.
Well, that's my second question. So since you're going there, I'm really concerned about, as you say that, do you talk about a timeline? Because to get that to complete funding.
They're excluded. Okay.
Okay, all
think that what we learned in terms of, although we were interested in whether or not pension obligations could be wrapped into that 6% or 3% or whatever, based on all that we heard from experts and staff. Not that staff is also expert, I suppose. We concluded that the best we could do with regard to pension obligations was that the county executive, when the county executive submits a budget, if it does not include a line item for the I can't remember whatever the magic number that the actuaries say it should include to fully. If it doesn't include that, then that is the one item where the county council can increase that item.
Okay, so rather than the council reviewing the actuarial recommendations, the county executive will be tasked with including this in the budget.
In the budget.
And is there, and I apologize, but there's a baseline that he has to meet or she has to meet?
$1. Because it has to be in the budget. It has to be in the budget. And if the in terms of a baseline,
but there's nothing to require it, right?
It has to be in the budget. That we cannot. We concluded after listening to everyone, much as many members wanted it to be included, because it was described to us the impracticality of how many. It's always a floating target, whether the stock market goes up or it goes down. That it would tie, if we included it, that it would tie the hands of the county government, that it might, trying to include it, speaking of the bond rating, that was something that we received advice that it was not something that should appropriately be included in the 6% or 3% cap. So if it wasn't going to be included in the 6% cap, that is, all the county's pension obligations are in one pot.
Right.
The other debt obligations do not include the pension obligations. So the best that we were able to come up with, and I think it was our next to last meeting, I think it was probably in my opinion, one of our best solutions to a problem that seemed intractable, and that was that the executive is to include the actuarial required contribution or recommended contribution. If the executive, he or she does not include full funding at that rate, then the executive must state in the budget why not.
Okay.
And the council has the ability to increase that item. No other items, but to increase that item.
I like that. That makes sure that we're for future boards and future government operations that we're declaring and honoring, doing our best to honor that. Does that include OPEB benefits, or is that a different trust fund? I'm looking.
By that you mean?
Mr. Eichels, does this wrap all that in together, if I may ask you that question? Does this, no?
I don't believe it includes
OPEB trust fund?
What is that?
That's
old people.
Other post-employment benefits.
Oh, it does.
Basically,
it does include
health retiree.
Okay,
it
good.
does include the other post-employment benefits.
Well, that's quite a liability.
Yes, and the annual recommended contribution, which we shorten as the ARC, does not, what they've seen, does not include that OPEB recommended contribution. So, like I said, I'm not sure whether it includes it or it doesn't include it, but if Mr. Collins says it does include it, then I would have to agree.
That'd be
Well,
a good.
I will just you can, I don't want to keep everybody up overnight on this, but if you look at 506B, it says the annual required contribution for pension and other post-employment benefits.
Okay, well then that's an important acknowledgement, because that's a dollar figure that is very different than just the actuarial amounts. So this is the plan, and quite honestly, I could sit here and say how responsible, but the reality of that number is really something very different. So it'd be good if we could.
And the big difference is you are currently meeting your ARC payment based on the actuarial for the pension. You are not meeting that for the OPEB currently.
But it sounds like you all have considered that, so we're in good shape, correct? Yes.
We tried.
Okay.
Okay? And again, setting the limit at 3% was not a criticism of current or past staff or government. It's but as the stock market advertisements say, past performance is no guarantee of future whatever. So we wanted to put, our job here was, as we saw it, we all agreed our job was to give good government officials the ability and the authority to do good, and to limit unwise officials from doing unwise things.
Mr. Collins, thank you. They were my biggest concerns, was that piece of it in terms of the budgeting, the flexibility, and understanding obligations. And I can say that I can't imagine any elected official doesn't want to do a good job. And that's why, this pre-planning, if you will, with the charter and using this as the opportunity to really set these standards, because I don't view these as limitations. I view these as standards, the standards that we want to meet here in Charles County. And so, but thank you, and I echo what my colleagues have said. This is an awful lot of work and really a great product. And the citizens ultimately will decide, and that's what even makes it more special. Being on a board of commissioners with really unclear understanding of what you can and cannot do sometimes is very difficult, and this allows us to have true leadership and council members that are actually representing citizens, others that are able to see the big picture and represent citizens. I appreciate it. I thank you, and I think the citizens will appreciate it as well. Ms. Way, I didn't mean to stop you there.
No, I was just going to say thank you for those words. I think the citizens need to hear that, especially coming from the commissioners. And then furthermore, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out and speak to us individually in the very beginning, and to set the platform that you all expected a spirit of excellence out of us, and also to formally thank all of the experts who came and spoke. So
you did have quite a slew of people coming through all the time. So,
yes.
But well, this, as they say, this isn't goodbye. This is just until we meet again, because I expect that we will be relying on you considerably. So, Ms. Holtz, in terms of the technical aspects, we simply accept the report, accept the charter. Excuse me.
Accept the charter, and you don't have to adopt this resolution because by law you have to advertise it twice in the next 30 days, and the county attorney has to form the question. So
we can, then let me close with this. Is there a motion to accept the Charles County Charter as presented by the Charter Board?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Collins. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. And, I don't know how to say thank you enough. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
And Commissioner, if I can
I feel like we
point
should have
out,
champagne or something, shouldn't we? Oh, I think that's against the rules here at county government.
if I could point out, both of the resolutions said that the proposed charter will go before the voters for ratification at the 2014 general election. That did not change from the first resolution to the second.
Okay, thank you.
That is the original. I don't know if
Bring me a picture.
I'll give that to the clerk, and I'd love to have another copy if that's an extra. And we won't kill another tree.
Guys need a picture. Framers. The framers. Picture of the framers. They actually took.
If you all could just wait a minute so that we could come down, we just want to we have to do a quick motion, do we not, to go into closed session? Okay, so Commissioners, is there a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Maryland Annotated Code Section 10-508A1? Let's get this wrong. 1, 4, 7, 8, and 9, and also to discuss administrative issues. Is there a motion? Motion by Commissioner Collins. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion carries. And we will return at 4:30 p.m.
Good afternoon. The next item on the agenda is a briefing on the Sheriff's Office Retirement Plan, or SORP, and committee's recommendations. And Mr. Mark Belton, our county administrator, will be doing this presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. This is a continuation of a previous discussion that the board has had, so let me just bring you up to date, refresh your memories on it. On May 16th, the SORP committee, the Charles County Sheriff's Office Retirement Plan Committee, made a recommendation to the commissioners in response to the commissioners' request, which was based on a letter you received from the retired members of the Sheriff's Retirement Plan. And the request was for a voting member or an additional member, a sixth member of the committee, to be a retiree. Very similar to the discussion we had previously regarding the Charles County Employee Retirement Committee. The Retirement Plan Committee met, discussed the situation, and ultimately recommended to the Board of County Commissioners that to be consistent with the Employees Retirement Committee, the Sheriff's Office Retirement Plan Committee ought to add 2 new members, one being a retiree member and one being a member of the general public, which is consistent with general finance office accounting best practices. Hopefully that member of the general public would have a background in public finance. When we presented that to